Ole Miss.
There's no Cinderellas. There's no Cinderella-esque team. There's none. BYU has the second largest NIL fund outside of Duke in college basketball.
And they got the number one player in the
Arkansas
country
has
coming in.
Walmart money.
I don't think
How are these guys Cinderellas? Doesn't make any sense.
But the people that are looking for Cinderellas are going to hitch their wagon to something, and I could see it being those two teams.
I don't think there's no Cinderella. That's my takeaway. There's just none.
There's none. I'm not arguing.
Michigan have money. Yes. Does Auburn have money? Yes. Houston has money. Purdue has money. Kentucky, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Michigan State. This is all football money schools. Right?
I'm with you. I don't think there is a Cinderella, but people are going to make their case.
That's the answer.
People are going to make their case for a 10 Arkansas at BYU who you don't see there every year. That's all I'm saying. And I know I like Calipari. My bracket's busted.
You're just doing that for the seeding. This is a team that has Walmart NIL money with them.
And McDonald's All-Americans and Wagner and company.
5 stars all over the place.
I know. Trust Colin, I know. I'm just saying.
I don't know what you're saying.
How many, where were we?
I don't know what you're saying.
Last week at TGL, people were like, oh, we love Cinderellas. They'll probably hitch their wagon to the high seats with Arkansas and BYU. That's my best guess.
There's just no Cinderella. So find a team that you think is going to win it all or you want to root for and go with it. I don't know if you're just going to do it for the sake of doing it for a smaller, lesser seeded team because these guys are not Cinderellas. Their bottom line, BYU went 26-9 and they're in the Big 12. That's a Cinderella. Arkansas was in the SEC. They have Coach Calipari, top 6-5 coach in the sport. Hey, that's not a Cinderella.
I'm fine with it, man. Screw Cinderella as far as I'm concerned. Kyle, these are going to be great games.
Fine.
It's going to be great. These are the best teams. This is what we're.
But the question is about the NIL. The question is about the NIL. I think it has something to do with it.
It might have something to do with it, but the last 2 years, we weren't hearing that. We weren't hearing that because some of the Cinderellas and whatever were there. I just think it's one of those years where these teams that were constructed, a lot of it maybe had to do with NIL.
Do you not think NIL is evolving? I mean, FAU and San Diego State was 2 years ago. That was 2 years, and they got 4 years in NIL.
I think a lot of it had, you look at Michigan. Michigan plucked a lot from FAU, obviously, because the coach went there. Florida with Martin, they got an FAU player. Obviously,
John L. Davis at Arkansas.
Obviously, NIL has something to do with it. But where was this energy for the last 2-3 years? This wasn't necessarily the story. It wasn't that NIL is ruining Cinderella because there are a lot of Cinderellas that were there. It just happens that this is one of those years where they weren't.
I agree with that, but I think that there's probably merit to the argument that the high majors. It's a matter of if you're going to put it together in a pie chart. Who benefits the most off of the floodgates of the NIL, the lack of barriers to the NIL? Is it the low major team who now all of a sudden gets more access to the higher-rated high school players because the higher-rated high school players, as Rick Pitino said earlier in the year, are not necessarily getting found by those top-tier teams because they either are not going to play or they don't need them because they're looking for transfers. So there's that. But there's also to the other end that the high major teams have the money and the power and the brand recognition to pluck whoever they want year in and year out to put together a roster. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess is entirely up to you. But for me, I think that this NIL is a testament. No wonder that no mid-majors are succeeding. Now, Colorado State was about 3 seconds away in a travel call from being in this tournament and this conversation not even being a thing. But there was a surprising lack, especially in that first round, a lack of pressure, of tension, of intensity from those lower seeds, at least for the most part, comparatively to years past. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I personally wanted a little bit more drama. The game stunk in those first 2 days. But to me, I see both sides. I do. And I think you'd be a fool not to say that the NIL, which the higher seeded teams, the top teams in the country, have a plethora of resources to put together as best they can. If you're Drake, how do you feel if you're Drake? How does that help the mid-major that the second-year coach, a year after signing a 5-year deal with Drake, now takes the Iowa job? Yeah. The Colorado State coach signed with Minnesota before the plane landed.
Sean Miller,
Xavier, it's a stepping stone job.
You understand, though. It's the same thing.
Will Wade. So I understand from a perspective that the mid-major teams, the low-major teams, get more access to high-level JUCO recruits, high-level high school recruits because higher seeded or high major teams don't want them. But to the same token, how are you supposed to put together a roster year in and year out to try to compete when you have to flush it out and reset every single year?
I'm not ready to overreact after 1 year.
Neither am I. If this it's too small of a sample size.
If this continues to be a thing, sure, we'll overreact. But I think we got to continue to monitor it. If it continues to happen 2-3 years in a row, all right, maybe there is a problem. And I think I'm not saying NIL is going to be completely fixed, Kyle, within 2-3 years, but I think steps towards the right direction are going to be made. How about the only double-digit seed advancing, busting my bracket? How about that? Arkansas. It's the only upset. The only and guess what? It busted Mike Rizzo, buddy. It busted my bracket. The damn Johnnies. And we had our top 63 event for our high school. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's where our station ranks the top high school basketball players. We do it for football. It was our first year for basketball. I didn't get to watch any of the game, so I had to go back, watch highlights and whatever. God, the Johnnies were terrible. They had their worst first half. That was the worst first half we've seen them play all year. And the second half didn't get any better. If the Johnnies were still alive, Colin, I'd be right there in there. But with my champion gone, I'm busted, bud. I'm busted.
Yeah. The brackets. My bracket's been dead since day one. But
what? Because of Clemson?
Yeah.
What's your game? What's your championship game?
Florida Duke.
You're good.
How is that good?
Because you have your championship game.
Everybody has Florida Duke.
You gotta.
Everybody has Florida Duke.
Auburn. Okay?
Auburn.
Yeah, you're done.
Everybody has that.
You're done. You don't have.
I have a bracket winner and they lost. That's the term you're looking for. I have a bracket winner and they lost.
There you go. Answers my question, but the one high seed to go ruined me. Ugh. Everyone's alive but me. Anyway.
UConn took it to Florida yesterday. Florida, one of, if not the best team in the field. Got completely blitzed in a lot of ways by UConn yesterday, and Dan Hurley and that staff put together quite a performance. And one of the best games of the tournament, close towards the end. Walter Clayton, that guy's a hero. I mean, that's the only way to put it. That guy is a superstar.
Right.
But Dan Hurley, of course, goes to the media after the game. He's emotional here. And then all of a sudden, there's a video of him going through the tunnel post-game, talking about the refs and a bunch of cuss words that I can't say on the radio. And Dan Hurley talking about the refs and the whole thing, whining and whining and whining. And the same conversation happens about Dan Hurley being the ultimate villain of college basketball. We'll get into that. We'll get into a little Rick Pitino, a little more college basketball as we roll on with the program. First, 888-760-3776, the number to get into the program. Are you starting to call fire a little bit that no Cinderellas really had a shot this year in the NCAA tournament? Outside of Colorado State, it was a pretty unremarkable first weekend in terms of a story. Is that a problem for you? Is this a reflection of the NIL, or